Thank you and welcome everyone to our City Council workshop of Monday, October 23rd. We'll get started with discussion of the Gateway Overlay Ordinance.
Mayor, if I may,
Yes, sir.
after the last meeting and after our one-on-one conversation with each of you and reviewing with staff, reviewing the entire overlay district legislation, it's clear that, some work needs to be done. It's clear that there's areas where the ordinance can be improved greatly. And working with Sylvia, Alex, and Heidi, Tammy, we recognize that there is a need, and we promise that this what you have in front of you here is a first step. It's a step that I recommend that we approve. And in speaking with Calvin Giordano in January or February, we're going to have another ordinance to address the remaining portion of the overlay district. But with this ordinance in front of you, I mean, this workshop is to discuss it, maybe make some modifications. I know Councilman Santin wanted a brewery where we have to research it so that we can prepare the language, the next ordinance for, so that we can achieve the desired result. So with that being said, I do recommend approval of the ordinance later on tonight. Subject to any tweaks that you guys may have. But I just wanted to put that on the record.
Thank you, City Manager. Appreciate that. And actually, even though we don't have it on here, I do want to, this is a workshop and I value, and I know the rest of the council greatly value input from the residents. So if there is somebody who would like to speak briefly, 2 minutes on this, I will, before we start our discussion, I will open it up and listen to anyone from the public. Okay, thank you. All right. Heidi, do you want to get started?
Sure, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So at the last regular council meeting, and I know all of you have individually heard my remarks on this between the last meeting as we were briefed for this evening. But between the last reading on October 9th, feels like it's longer. On October 9th, we sort of gained consensus on a few things, or at least it seemed that we had gained consensus. So for tonight's meeting, I know that, let me take a second. We had talked about discussing the Gateway Overlay District as a whole. And as I shared with you in your individual briefings, I think that it's important that we remain focused on the ordinance that we have before us. And then also, as the city manager was indicating, focus on the Gateway Overlay District ordinance as a whole. The ordinance that we have right now is to deal only with the permitted uses. There are other things in the ordinance that have been raised by you, by members of the community, that we've seen internally, that we would like to address separately with the Gateway Overlay ordinance. And so that's something that, as the manager was expressing, we will be working with our city planners to revise and work with you all to do a better Gateway Overlay District. But for tonight's purposes, I think our time is best used reviewing the ordinance that we've already looked at, hopefully getting some more consensus on that and making a decision at tonight's regular council meeting. And then if we have time, get some initial feedback from you on the Gateway Overlay District ordinance as a whole. So with that, at the last meeting, we had some consensus on removing street frontages. You'll remember that the Gateway Overlay ordinance had street frontages, uses that were limited to certain streets. So in your packet, and I think all of you have a printed version of the ordinance as it was presented at the last meeting. They all have this order. You have the ordinance that you have the first document you have is the Gateway Overlay District ordinance as it is downloaded from Unicode. Then the following document is the ordinance that was presented at the last regular council meeting. And then the next document is an alternate version of the ordinance. And that includes revisions that we have collectively looked at on the staff planning side and city attorney side to bring you an ordinance that we think is going to, it takes into consideration all of the items that you've discussed publicly. And so hopefully this is the one that we'll be looking at, I think, tonight. And then the last document that you have is what we call a clean version of the alternate version. So that it's a little easier to read without strike through and underline, so you can actually see what the legislation would be if it were adopted. So with that, I'm gonna work off of, so that we're all looking at the same thing. The document that is sort of in the middle of your packet, and it's styled, the header and footer is alternate version, and it says it's an alternate version of the proposed ordinance. So this is the last clean, no, not the clean one, the one right here, just so that you can see the difference. So with that, go to, please, just to follow along page 3 of 5, which is where we actually get into the text of the legislation. And if it's helpful, I can share my screen if that's helpful to you all as well. Is it? One moment. So at the last meeting,
That's page 3.
this is page 3 of 5. Page 3 of 5 of the ordinance, of the alternate version. So at the last meeting, we talked about, in general, removing the street frontages. So you see that we've stricken those in red text from this alternate version. As you'll recall, subsections A and B on lines 86 and 87 generally remain the same as they were in the original gateway ordinance. First floor uses were always limited to restaurant and retail. What we've done in subsection A in line 86 is add, and this was in the last version, just to refresh everybody's recollection, we added and lounge, cafe, and cafeteria to retain consistency with the definition or with the use description from the central business district. And then subsection B is just providing for retail use, which is what you already have in the code. So are there any questions on A or B? On subsection C, what we did between the October 9th meeting and now is we listened to your feedback and the concerns that the Gateway District, the intent and the vision that you all had was that it be a walkable, lively downtown Gateway District area. So in keeping with that, I know there were concerns about allowing office uses on the first floor. So this version, this alternate version provides, instead of it reading office use including medical and dental, it now provides solely for medical or dental office use on first floors. Office uses generally can continue to be on the second and third floors of buildings in the Gateway District. So the definition that you were presented with at the last meeting remains the same. But this is again to keep it with the distinction of medical or dental being distinct from a general office use, which is more for professional offices like CPAs or lawyers or appraisers, insurance brokers, etc. Are there any questions on this subsection? In subsection D, for personal services, we have left it the same, except for two things. We removed the frontage restriction, which is the direction that you seem to be going in at the last meeting. And then we also updated the Scrivener's error. We had been asked for some clarification on whether massage therapy would be an allowable use. And in order to keep this use description consistent with what we have in the central business district, we're keeping the description the same. So personal services in both the CBD as well as the gateway overlay would be described in the same manner. The same way as I was explaining with subsection A, that the restaurant, lounge, cafe, and cafeteria, that description is the same under the CBD. And so personal services like barbershops, beauty parlors, physical therapy clinics, these are just examples of personal services. It is not meant to be an exhaustive list. So licensed facilities that provide personal services could provide services on first floors of the Gateway Overlay District. Are there any questions on subsection D as in David? Then finally, in subsection E, the only change that was made was removing the frontage restriction. And again, that's in keeping with the discussion that you had at the last meeting. Otherwise, subsection E remains the same as it was presented to you. Are there any questions on E?
Yes, the difference between 0.25 and 0.30, I have no conception of what's the difference?
I need to pull up the map to show it.
I'm gonna call airline news.
Yeah, so it's from the. I don't know if Sylvia or Alex could help me explain this, but it's obviously a greater distance is being provided between vet uses.
Okay, that's what I
So,
thought. but I-
yes,
When
there's,
it's a couple hundred feet difference, it's not, so it's just a straight shot, no walking on the street, it's a straight shot.
Understood. Thank you.
are there any other questions?
I do have, so Alex, you're saying for this distance, it's like
Bird flies?
it's as the bird
Not-
flies.
Not as walking.
Profiles,
Yes.
Yeah, if you look at a map. You look at a map, it's drawing straight line that.
From front door to front door. So sometimes, and this was a discussion that I was having with my partners, there's times where you do it walking distance, and there's other times where you do it as the crow flies distance. This is sort of a combination of the two, where you're looking at front door to front door, but as a crow flies from front door to front door.
Through the chair, I remember making that request because we had done the map before and there was a gray line, so I was trying to expand it a little bit more to be more transparent, to avoid future maybe variances, because it's so small, so I wanted to create a bigger gap to avoid future requests like that, since we're already in the ordinance.
Thank you. So Mayor, if there's no other questions, as I shared with, I think all of you, sometimes I forget what I've said to each one of you when you have the same conversation, but one of the things, and JC alluded to this in his remarks, we've talked about, individually, we've talked about different things that you'd like to see in the Gateway Overlay. And as I said to some of you, it's not that we're saying no right now. And, the fact that we're making changes right now doesn't mean that we can't make changes in the future. And I want that to be abundantly clear, not just to the council, but to the community, that this will come back. This ordinance was a very specific ordinance to deal with permitted uses on first floor levels. It doesn't mean that it's a list that's going to stay stagnant. And there's certainly uses such as breweries and other things that we can look at. but with time, do it in a way that makes sense for the district. And I think that we have great planners on the team that can now help guide us there.
Okay. Are there any other items that you want to go over? with this?
Not, I don't think that, with respect to the ordinance, I think we briefed it extensively. I don't know if there's any questions, any further questions?
Through the chair,
Yes, sir.
I just want to say that, I'm very appreciative of the work that's been done, both by us and council and manager and so forth, because we thought we had this done about a month ago, and then we got into some discussions and picking and so forth, and I believe it was either Councilman Head or yourself, Mayor, that suggested maybe a workshop to make sure that we get it all done. I think it's, as far as I'm concerned, I'm satisfied with this. And we should be ready to this evening's discussion later. And I'm also satisfied and heartened by my discussions with the city manager and council, that the other questions that have been raised about the broader district and some of the implications of what we're doing here tonight, that we are going to take a holistic look at issues that have been raised and show really that it's come up as we have so far with the kinds of adjustments that need to be done so that everyone feels comfortable that we've done a comprehensive job of this. And so I'm satisfied with what we've got before us, and I'm ready to move this forward to, I think it's a consensus that you're probably looking for on this to move forward. I don't think we need consensus.
Well, we need consensus to put it on the agenda as this will be the alternate.
So-
Will be on this agenda for the 7 o'clock meeting, right?
So your 7 o'clock agenda has the ordinance, it has the same packet that's sitting in front of you. It's part of the agenda packet, so I think, if this alternate version is what there is consensus with, then at the 7 o'clock meeting, I would anticipate a motion to approve the alternate version of the ordinance. And if there's a second and approval, then the alternate version is what would be, approved.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve or get
No, no,
consensus.
no.
Sorry, to get consensus.
No motion at a workshop.
Okay.
And
It's rush hour.
So you're,
Well, to appeal it.
So,
does everyone feel comfortable? Well, first of all, is there anything anyone else wants to
I do not have it.
discuss, bring up for this workshop? Okay, I think we've all worked really, really hard at looking at all this and realized that each of us have concerns, things, visions, I guess more than saying concerns, visions of what we'd like to see for the city in this area. And some of the things are possible, some of the things are not possible, some of the things are possible down the road. This addresses, concerns that we have right now. I want to thank Heidi, Sylvia, Alex, Roger, and Tammy and JC for working with each of us individually. As most residents may or may not know, because of the sunshine law, we really can't discuss our concerns except in a public meeting. So it's a long process sometimes it works very well, and other times some things, just take a lengthy process. But is there anything else, this workshop, since our last meeting, in preparation for this workshop, I know that the staff has worked really, really hard to try to address our concerns, to bring together an alternate plan that we all pretty much agree with.
Yeah.
Chair.
Sorry, I apologize for that.
Heidi, for the retail part, I just want to make sure this gateway would fall under the rules regardless of, I'm just trying to like dot the i's here. Like there is adultery retail. I don't know if that's something that we need to cover in here or add. No, like adult entertainment or adult, I mean, I just wanna
No,
make
those-
sure we don't have that.
Those are not permitted uses.
They're not permitted, but the CBD has verbiage in there, not allowing, I just wanna make sure that that falls into too.
No, your adult entertainment uses are constrained to, they're provided for, I believe, near Abraham Tract.
Okay.
Yes, I think it's just Abraham Tract.
I'm
It's
just clearing the air here, cause I know somebody that's very creative might wanna open up a retail and it could be, you know. Something like that, and I just wanna make sure that I know.
So no, there's a whole
I agree.
definition,
I just
and
wanna-
there's a whole,
So, but we don't need it verbatim in here, cause it's not allowed.
no, it's only allowed in the district, but
Okay, got it. That's ask that question.
So if anyone else has,
What, do it?
Councilman?
Yeah. Do have one thing that I want to make sure, is I don't want to come back to this again. And I thought we addressed it, but I see here, they're still the same way. Aren't one of the bays that some of these uses are gonna be there, are more than 2,000 square feet? 2,250 or something like that? I don't wanna, I don't have a problem with it, but I don't want it to become an issue where they won't be able to do what we're about to have a consensus here to go forward.
Understood. I have not personally received any feedback that would
Okay.
be,
I
would be of
thought
concern.
I thought one of the
but-
bays, I've seen different site plans, so I don't know which one is exactly the most accurate one, but.
Yeah, I don't know, the way that the definition of medical or dental office use is set forth, it means a small scale office with a maximum floor area of 2,000 square feet. And then it goes on with the maximum floor area is 2,000. So I've not heard a concern on that, but I don't know if I.
I thought one of those, but if I'm wrong. So I don't want it to just come up back up. I don't have a problem with 2,250, that's what one of the bays are, of the ones that are considering. I just don't, because then of course it goes back to the building department's gonna follow things.
So you say maybe just subject to one bay?
Well, just that's the bays that we have there is 2,250, I think. I'm just talking about for this one here in particular, if we're gonna have them try to get a,
I understand it, and just so everybody
Architectural
understands the
use.
process. If someone comes in to get a certificate of use, or, when they come in with their building plans.
right,
The building plans get routed to various people. One of the first people that it will go to is our zoning review, to Sylvia and Alex. And they will look, if it's a medical or dental office use, they're going to look at the code and see, is the maximum floor area 2,000 square feet?
well, no, I got you.
Exceeds that, then it will be.
Well, that's what I'm saying, like, if right now, this whole thing has been addressed to these particular uses in general, if there is one of the bays that I thought, if I'm wrong for that, if there is, I would like to address it now, not later. Because then they're gonna come back because they're not gonna be able to get,
Let's do this.
If I may make a suggestion, maybe we can increase that number into the ordinance, make that. Because if what
Well,
he's
it is,
saying
make
is
sure.
correct, we just have to double check.
Good, Chair, this is very easy. Can you tell me what the maximum bay is there, Carlos?
About 2,300.
2,300, so is that the number that should be equivalent to one bay?
That sounds about right. Our base 2,200,
You know what I'm saying? So maybe it should be,
make a maximum.
that was a bit 40.
All right, let's do.
I just don't want it to come back.
Let's take a break a minute, because we're in the middle of the workshop, and let's take a break and address this and let Heidi and Alex look into it.
That's not before the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
community that are here. If the request is to change it, increase it to 2,300, we can certainly do that. That's an easy change. And so if there's a motion this evening, I would be looking for a motion to approve the alternate version with the increase to the square footage of 2,300.
Yeah, I'm seeing it.
Is that the size of the one?
Okay.
The one that you've already got planned?
Are you still on break, Mayor? Are you still
Pardon
on, are you still on break or you're going back to the meeting?
We're asking for.
Yeah,
the breakup
I
time
just
to find
requested
out.
the actual construction plans to be brought up. I just wanted to give you the exact number that we're at, but I think if you do consider the 2,300,
We
You would
should
be
really
fine.
get feedback on the record.
Okay, all right, are we, all right, have you had a chance to, you and Alex to look into it? All right.
We don't have there's no concern from our side, but I think, Mayor, what you wanted is, once the workshop concludes, we can confer with any members of the audience who are here who want to provide feedback.
Okay, but once the workshop concludes, you're going to prepare something for us to look at the next meeting.
The ordinance is already prepared. It's
So it would just be,
changing the
making
number.
that, changing it during the 7 o'clock meeting. Yes. Okay, all right. That sounds good. Let's, continue with the workshop though. And Sylvia, if you had anything to add, I want to make sure anything that we have questions that we're addressing now.
The only thing I wanted to say is I don't think that we have any particular number in mind. There's no magic number as to the size of a medical office. We wanted to keep them small, but they need to be reasonable because we're not focused on a single building here, right? However, since there is a potential case for one use, we want to know if this works for this particular project. So from what we saw, the bays that are not dedicated to retail or restaurant might be a little bit larger than the 2,000, but not by a lot. So we're gonna verify and, we can adjust. We don't have, Alex, you agree? We don't have any particular concerns with it.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, Councilman, for bringing that up. All right, is there anything else?
Yeah, Mayor, I wanted to
Yes,
make
sir.
a comment. So just, I'm glad that we're moving forward on this and just to, because I had given the example of my son's pediatrician and Nordstrom in my Merritt Place. But it was brought up that that was a third floor. So I walked Main Street of downtown Doral, which is 2 blocks, and then they've got vibrant pedestrian activity there and I think kind of like what we would like to see in our downtown. And as I walk those 2 blocks, they've got Booyah and Biscuit Nazca and Crema and Doral Yard and Dragonfly and Bunny Cakes. They've got lots of restaurants and places to eat. But also within those 2 blocks on Main Street, there's a barber shop, a hand and stone massage, a dog groomer, a gym called Sweat 440, a diagnostic imaging, an urgent care, an OBGYN, and a public library. And I don't think that mixture in downtown Doral has affected the vibrancy of pedestrian activity or the walkability of it. And I think that it's worked over there. It doesn't always mean that it's going to work everywhere, but I think that we're doing the right thing by allowing these types of service retail businesses and medical and dental into this overlay district.
Anything else?
Yeah, no, it's all good. But there's a reason that some of that is the way it is, because when they go for site plan approval, things get approved according to what they're offering. So there's still a need to make sure that they put certain uses in there. So if not, you'll see 2, 3 blocks full of the other uses. But that's for the next one. We'll keep going for this one for now. There's no need, but there's a reason that you sometimes have to make a note of what you want in a particular area to kind of get the ultimate result of what the purpose of it initially was. So it's not like something you just can't discuss. So future new construction, we'll discuss how we address those things.
Thank you, Councilman. And I just want to say, is there anything else? Anyone else? Okay, I just want to say that through the past few meetings when we discussed the Gateway District, I know it's come up often as, the comment's been made. I don't know what was what the council was thinking of then, and I don't mean this in disparaging, it's just been said as we don't know what they were thinking, but this is what we have, and I just want to remind everyone that the same will be said from us in a few years. I don't know why, so that's why I think this is so important, that we look at it as a whole Gateway District, that we have a plan, that, in a few years, when someone says, I don't know why they, made these changes and not others and stuff, that there's a record of it and we can justify it. We've discussed it. We all looked at our concerns. We tried, I feel very confident that all of us, we may not be 100% happy with, the final outcome. I think all of us would like to see more that we would like to do while we're working on this, but we've worked hard on it. We've certainly listened to the input from residents, business owners, and I feel pretty confident that this is much better than what we had 2 weeks ago. So with that said, if there's no other comments, then again, I want to thank the staff, because the work that y'all have done behind the scenes on this, dealing with each of us individually and then coming back and, in addition to everything else that's going on, has been monumental. So we'll take a consensus to put it on the agenda, the alternate.
It's on the agenda.
Okay,
It's on the
so-
agenda. I was just gonna add, because I know that there's members of the public that are very interested in this, and like I said earlier, we are going to work on a revised version of the overall gateway ordinance. There's been concerns expressed, and I wanna address them head on, so that people know that we are going to look at it. I'm not saying what the change is going to be, but we are hearing you, and we are going to address these things. So there've been concerns about uses in the district in existing buildings. And, why are some uses being allowed in existing buildings, but not in new buildings? So that part of the ordinance where it's not necessarily clear to readers will be updated. There's also been concerns about what substantial redevelopment or renovation means. And whether if somebody has an existing two-story building, do they need to provide for restaurant, retail, and these uses on the first floor when it's an existing building that is going to be renovated? So as you prepare for our next discussion on the gateway, I'd like for you to think about what your goals are, because that will help us draft and craft an ordinance that meets your vision. And so this is holding within your power as legislators. So think about, in many cases, Sylvia, Alex, and I see in many codes that if somebody is going to renovate a building, or if a building is damaged in excess of 50% of its value, that the building needs to come up to the new code. That's not precise in this ordinance. And so that is one of the things that we'll be needing your direction on, as to whether you'd like to see that threshold sort of being the kickstart to having to come into compliance with the new code. Or if you want to say, you know what, just because somebody is going to renovate their building, we don't necessarily want them to have to change their entire first floor. So those are the sorts of things that I'd like for you to think about and give us your feedback on.
Thank you, Heidi. Okay, is there anything else, or we'll close the workshop and we'll reconvene at 7 for our regular council meeting? Yep. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.